That guy on bass here, you can call me Chris, and you join me sat cross-legged on the floor of my house to talk about possibly my favourite bass amplifier available at the moment, the Ashdown EVOIII 500. Quick disclosure before we dive in, this video is indeed sponsored by Ashdown. I am actually an Ashdown artist. The lovely people at Ashdown have sent me this amp to play around with. I've used it at a couple of gigs, big and small, over the course of the summer, and I've loved using it. However, this isn't going to affect my opinions in any way. I'm going to give you a totally unbiased review of the head, walk you through the pros and the cons. Spoiler alert though, there's a lot of pros and not a lot of cons. So what is the Ashdown Rootmaster EVOIII range? The newly updated Ashdown Rootmaster EVOIII range is designed to deliver that signature Ashdown tone, but in a small and portable package. Featuring a comprehensive EQ section, a sub-harmonic generator, compression, and a valve-emulated drive, this head is designed to be as versatile as it is portable. Rewind almost a year ago, and myself and my podcast co-host Johnny Dibble travelled down to Ashdown for a special edition of our podcast episode. You can check that out in the description below, and that's when we both got the opportunity to try this head for the first time. And even through a small cabinet at a low volume, we were both blown away by the versatility and the sheer girth of this head. Ever since then, I've been pining to get my greedy ginger mitts on one of these amps, and now it's finally arrived. I can safely say it's never let me down, and it absolutely does not disappoint. The absolute secret weapon that this head contains, though, is the analog cab sim that you can apply to the DI, which is housed on the back of the head. This is a game changer for people like me who like to use drive, but also want to send a signal directly from the head to the front of house to make things nice and easy when you're on stage. This helps get rid of that unnecessary fizz that you find on the top end of a distorted bass tone and allows you to sit in the mix super nicely while still cutting through in those little frequencies that matter the most. So now we're going to walk through the front panel of the EVOIII 500, and I'm going to walk you through some of the features. So starting at the top, obviously we've got the famous Ashdown VU. Then we've got a pretty comprehensive EQ control. Starting off, we've got bass, low mid, middle, high mid, and treble. And one of the really good things about this is we've not only got bass, middle, and treble, we've also got a low mid and a high mid, which I really enjoy as it allows me to really fine-tune my bass tone from bass to bass and gig to gig. Then on the bottom row, we've got Ashdown's amazing shape button. Now this is almost like a cheat code in my opinion. Clicking this allows you to engage a mid scoop with a slight boost at the low end and the high end. Not too dissimilar to something like an Ampeg SVT, for example. It's almost like I said, an EQ cheat code, really. If you're in a rush, plug everything in, engage the cab sim, which we'll talk about in a second, click that shape button, and you are essentially 90% of the way there, in my opinion, for a good, solid live bass tone. Then underneath the shape button, we've got a mute switch. You don't need me to explain what that does. And then we move into the gain control. This sets your input gain for the amp. Then we've got the compression. We've got an in and out switch for the compressor, an in and out switch for the drive, an overall control of the drive itself. This controls the sub-harmonic generator. Obviously turning this up gives you more sub. Happy days. And then we have a volume and a line mix control. Now, the secret weapon, as previously discussed, is the cab sim for this amp. So as you move from left to right, you've got a few different controls here that operates the cab sim. You've got a cab sim in and out. You've got the option to have a ported or sealed cab sim tone. Then we can jump from a 10-inch speaker to a 15-inch speaker. This is really good as these are really varied cab sims, and depending from gig to gig, I like to either use a 10-inch speaker, nice and tight, bit better treble response, or I want to go for that kind of more open 15-inch sound, which suits kind of like vintage stuff a little bit more in my opinion. And then finally, we have the option to bring in a horn, again, increasing the treble response of the cab sim. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a loop into the front of the Ashdown, and then we're going to mess around with some knobs and see what tone we come up with. So, pros and cons. Let's start with the pros. There's quite a lot here, to be honest. The main thing is the weight. This amp weighs absolutely nothing. Well, it doesn't weigh nothing. It weighs 2.5 kilos, which is insanely portable. Even for a solid-state amp like this, this is a seriously light head. And again, with stuff like the comprehensive EQ controls and the shape button, you've got an awful lot of versatility inside such a small head. Now, the cons. Ugh. There's not a lot. There's mainly two that jump out at me. I'm not a massive lover of the drive on this amp. I tend to find after you get it from about 10, 11 a.m. upwards, it starts to get a bit too fuzzy for my liking, but not like in a good way. But on those lower settings, it's really good at adding just like a little bit of punch and a little bit of grit to your tone to help you kind of sit in the mix and also kind of like poke through in the areas where it matters. And the same kind of applies for the compressor, really. As you get really high and you start to dig in when you're playing, I tend to feel like the compressor struggles a little bit and it starts to get a bit too grabby with the tone. You can hear it struggling and kind of trying to force itself onto your bass tone and really compress it nice and hard. Which, if you're turning the compression dial up to full, that is to be expected. However, again, from about noon or below, it's really good at kind of catching those transients, lifting up the low end, and just helping you be a bit more consistent in your playing, especially when you're slapping or playing with a pick. An additional bonus pro of this really has to go to the cab sim. The cab sim is a fantastic addition to an amp like this, and really, again, pushes that versatility and gives you a like rock solid, ready to go bass tone, nice and quick and easy. So that was my review of the Ashdown EVOIII 500. If you love this amp or you don't love this amp, that's perfectly fine. Just let me know in the comments below. I'd be curious to know if you're an owner of this amp. How do you transport it from gigs to gigs? I transport it in the box that it showed up in, and I think I'd like to get some sort of small case or bag. So if you've got any recommendations, let me know down below. As always, stay safe, play bass, and I'll see you in the next one.